Operating Room 12. During my first week of clinical rotations, I heard a woman crying inside an empty operating room. Later, I learned that members of the hospital staff had been hearing the same thing for years. The room was Operating Room 12. My first rotation was in orthopedics. Because it was a surgical department, I had the opportunity to observe procedures almost every day. That Wednesday, our professor was performing a skin flap reconstruction. The hospital had 20 operating rooms, numbered 1 through 20. Most of them were connected by shared scrub areas, and staff usually referred to them simply by number. Our operation that day was in Room 7. It was my first time assisting that professor, so I was especially careful. The procedure went smoothly. Partway through, the circulating nurse asked me to find several chairs. I left Room 7 and checked the other operating rooms one by one. The surgical suite was busy that day, and nearly every room was in use. When I reached Room 12, however, I found it empty. There were several unused chairs inside, so I went in, collected them, and carried them back to Room 7. Nothing happened, but the room itself struck me as unusual. Unlike the other operating rooms, Room 12 had been built by itself in a corner. It was not connected to any neighboring room or shared scrub area. Anyone working there had to use the main scrub room farther away. I assumed the strange layout was simply the result of limited space. By the time our procedure ended, it was almost 7 in the evening. The nurse asked me to return the chairs, so I carried them back to Room 12. The moment I stepped inside, I felt an intense cold. I was wearing surgical scrubs, and every patch of exposed skin immediately broke out in goosebumps. I set down the chairs and turned to leave. That was when I suddenly heard someone crying. It sounded like a woman. At first, I thought I must have imagined it. Patients undergoing surgery would be under anesthesia and unable to cry like that. There was also no reason for a doctor or nurse to be crying inside an empty operating room. I left without finding an explanation. The following evening, one of my classmates came back from his rotation and asked me, "Have you heard about Room 12?" I told him I knew the room and had gone inside to borrow chairs. He said his supervising physician had warned him that after dark, people sometimes heard a woman crying in there. He also claimed that during winter, bags of saline left inside the room could freeze. That made no sense. Operating rooms are climate controlled and kept at a stable temperature throughout the year. There was no ordinary reason for saline to freeze inside one room, while the rest of the surgical suite remained normal. On my next shift, I asked one of my own supervising doctors whether Room 12 really had that kind of reputation. He did not laugh at the question. He told me that Room 12 really was considered an unsettling place. After dark, people often reported hearing someone crying inside it, and many members of staff had heard the sound themselves. Operations were rarely scheduled there because people were reluctant to use the room. According to him, procedures performed in Room 12 had a reputation for not going smoothly. He had also heard that the room had once been used frequently for cardiac surgery, and that many patients had died there. Some members of the staff believed those deaths had left the room with an unusually heavy concentration of yin energy, the kind traditionally associated with death. I cannot verify any of those stories. I only know that I entered Room 12 twice. The second time was after dark. The room was empty, bitterly cold, and I heard a woman crying inside.